Hello everyone, my name is Ben, and welcome back to Pass the Podcast, a podcast where today we are not joined by our co-host Micah. He couldn't be here due to some unexpected circumstances that came up with work. We kind of fucked around and waited until the last minute for this one, so totally our bad on that side of things. He will be back for the next episode, and since I'm going to be talking about today's albums solo and just going through the list, we might have him come back and do a solo episode as well. But if not, we'll have an extra long episode next time around where he, in the beginning, will go give some brief opinions on all of these records as well. So we're not going to be completely missing out today, but it's just going to be you and I on the podcast today. We're going to be talking about some albums, just like the good old days when I did the monthly recaps. It's just me going through the list. If you're expecting this here forward to be a lot like those, however, that is probably not going to be about how we're going to roll here, because I am going pretty much off my dome, off the script, unscripted. Of course, I have notes. You know, we always go off of those. That's always there. It's always something we got in our back pocket, of course. But most of this is just going to be completely off the top of my head. We're going to go with some unfiltered opinions and whatnot. Having a little bit more of a conversational tone was always the goal of this, so I'm not going to go back on that now. With all that being said, today's first record on the agenda is going to be Smashing Pumpkins with Sire, their first record in a fairly long time. This year also saw a re-release and anniversary of their Melancholy album, so it's kind of been a big year for them, and unfortunately I'm sure they were going to tour and whatnot and kind of celebrate a little bit more, but regardless of that fact, they've came out and made a new record, a very, very large record at that, one of their biggest releases to date, for absolutely sure, and I think that ends up being one of its biggest downfalls. Now, I feel like I am at this point, and I've even made this exact comment that I'm known for this, for not being extremely patient with music, and I feel like that does definitely come into play here, but there is so much filler on this record, and unfortunately that's just the nature of the beast. Now, I think that there's a lot of stuff to like on here, though. At the same time, that's just the first, thing that grabs you immediately, kind of catches you off guard, is seeing that massive, gruesome hour and 12-minute runtime. But that's not to say that there's nothing to love with this record either, and I do think that fans are going to enjoy it, probably have enjoyed it quite a lot already. I mean, I haven't really seen the reception there. I just know that this is lukewarm, generally speaking. But, that's taking into account a lot of people like myself who haven't always been huge fans of the band and haven't really found all of their work to be especially great, and something that they specifically want to pay attention to. But this is Smashing Pumpkins. They've got a very large fan base, so it wouldn't be hard to imagine whatsoever that, they've got a lot of happy fans with this record at all. There is a really good kind of synth rock fusion going on with this, I noticed. A lot of it almost sounds a little bit retro. I feel like I feel that on almost every record that comes out this year, more and more. I mean, it was just a throwback year. I'm not sure if everybody just was feeling nostalgic, everybody was reaching from some of those old sounds, but yeah, a lot of the synthesizer work and a lot of the hooks on here did just give me some very vintage vibes, and not so much as, something like After Hours, where that was such a clear influence. Something like Future Nostalgia will go with really obvious examples like that, and I don't think that it was quite that obvious. However, it was certainly a factor to be considered. But with all that being said, I think that there were good and bad moments of that, but most of this record sounded pretty okay. And, if you were using it as a background album to, get some work done to, go for a walk with, just have the background of a conversation, have it lining that, I totally think that this record would be absolutely fine for that. There is completely nothing wrong and nothing offensive that goes on with the sound, nothing that is not pleasing to the ear, I suppose. Again, the problem is that it ends up becoming that background music, whether you want it to or not, because they're just not able to keep the listener interested for as long as they want to, despite a few really good tracks that pop up here and there. There will be a hook, there will be a melody, there will be a set of notes every once in a while that you just kind of go, wow, I wasn't really expecting that. That's really nice. That's really cool. Definitely happens. It's there. But the only times that I don't specifically dislike what is going on in the record is some really annoying tracks on here. Some that just come across to me in a tone, in a way where they just are not appealing. I mean, I think the first time I noticed this is actually a somewhat charming but somewhat annoying on the same end of things track when you ran into Ramona is the name of the track. I found it now, which had a very repetitive, very overstated kind of chorus with the name Ramona being repeated a lot of times. At the same time, like I said, it was kind of endearing, kind of full of personality, but really aggravating. Really aggravating, and I can totally see where that standpoint would be coming into play as well. So overall, I don't think that this thing is in any way horrendous. It's not offensive. It's not terrible on the ears, okay? It is not repulsive, all right? They didn't do something awful. It's not even their worst work. It does get a lot of bullshit, and a lot of the bullshit is well-deserved. However, it's not awful. It's not great. This Smashing Pumpkins album is an album by the Smashing Pumpkins, and that's really all I have to say about it. For overall out of 10 rating, I'm feeling about a 5 on this. Complete and total indifference. As far as favorites and least favorites go, I am going to go with actually back-to-back ones despite the 20-track runtime here. I'm going to be picking which is, of course, misspelled, as most of them very pretentiously are, and that one as my favorite track, and my least favorite track as Starcraft, with one too many R's, of course. And that's about all I have on that one. So moving forward to the new record from Miley Cyrus. Kind of came out of the blue on here. I don't know if there was singles leading up to this. I want to say there probably was. I feel like maybe one or two. I don't know if we had this album announcement beforehand, though, because I don't really remember anybody being excited about this before it dropped. And of course, Miley Cyrus is a really, really big name in pop music in general, in popular music all across the board. She is a huge name. So seeing her take up not only another album, but take up a totally different sound than what she had done previously, and kind of going back to the country roots, is very, very interesting. She has adopted a ton of not only more of the pop sounds that she had in kind of that middle section of her career, but also a ton of rock and roll kind of styles on here. A very like Joan Jett feeling, who is actually featured on this record. I'm thinking about the song I Love Rock and Roll, and I think of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts a lot when I am listening to this. Stevie Nicks, who is also featured on here, is really such a big influence on the sound here, which is something that was so very unexpected. You have those two features which are already like, wow, I haven't heard those names in a while. I haven't seen them appear on something in a while. And then you have Billy Idol as well. Same situation there, where it's like, it's very surprising to see a very common, popular pop star who's just a big name currently in the industry get these people who've put out like a lot of classics, who've put out, been putting out music for years and years. But I think that it's very symbolic that she has them on here. And it's also very symbolic that we see Dua Lipa on here, reaching back into my previous point about nostalgia and about throwback in the 80s being such a big part of 2020's music. You have Dua Lipa on here, who made basically a disco album this year, who made a very, very nostalgia-driven record, almost entirely based in that realm. It has it in the name. And to see her appearing here, also taking a lot of sounds from the same area, from the same time period, from, similar routes of popular music from the 80s and 70s and even 90s at times, is very indicative and should show you a lot about the sound that Miley approaches on this record, which is very fascinating. It is absolutely strange to see her going this direction, but still not as weird as some of the things that she's done. You have that absolute flop that was Miley Cyrus and Her Dead Pets with the flaming lips that she did. And obviously we don't want something that obscure and strange again that was just totally out of left field. But seeing her experiment a little bit more, it's actually pretty compelling. I was not expecting a record from Miley Cyrus to be one of my favorite pop albums of the year at all. I'm really impressed with that because her last few go-arounds with the output of those albums, if I can speak properly a little bit at all here, were just completely unimpressive and really, really mediocre at best, if not bad at times. So this is definitely a bit of a return to form. Besides all that, this is bold, it's multi-genre blending, and it's really boldly performed. It has some awesome performances. Not only is this a really kind of big statement, it comes across that way too. It makes you listen to it. She makes you listen to this album. Miley's performance on here is just really, really passionate a very frequent amount of times. And now I'm a little bit biased against that even because I am not a big fan of her vocal style and voice. It's just a range that doesn't necessarily appeal to me, but I can objectively look at it and say that it is still very good. And, even then, I could totally look past it on almost every single instance she was on the mic here and singing because it is very, very well performed. She really left an artistic impression here, which she totally could have came through with something boring and generic and still got on the radio and stuff. So it is really, really good to see that, put out some good pop and rock bangers on here that actually kind of make you pay attention to them. And there's even, influence coming from areas that I didn't already discuss, like country and synth pop even just occurring every once in a while here. There's so many bold genre fusions, and all of them come across in a way that makes you want to actually hear what's happening. Now, with all of my praises that I've already came across, there are plenty of moments that I don't like at the same time. There are forgettable moments all across this. Even that Joan Jett and the Blackhearts appearance that I already mentioned that is, of course, very symbolic and kind of like a rite of passage thing almost going on there, wasn't memorable. It wasn't one of the better songs on there, while that Billy Idol one was absolutely a fantastic track. Great kind of duet thing almost going on there. Some of these appearances, the song with Dua Lipa, I'm just not even recalling what really happened there. There are forgettable tracks, probably maybe a good quarter of them. This is an extremely long album, so it doesn't really have that much to work with either. I'm glad it didn't feel bloated with filler, but at the same time, it still felt like it had filler. It's just not bloated. There's tracks I definitely wouldn't come back to on here. And outside of that, there is a little bit of that trademark Miley Cyrus and general pop star. If we're just gonna even get into it, just the pop star as a whole kind of cringe lyrics that you're gonna run into. That mall pop cringe, all right? It's here. There are some lyrics that happen here and there that are just like, I really could have done without that. I can't come up with any specific examples off the top of my head, but I'm sure that isn't really needed for you to know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I have to look at contemporaries here. Talk about Dua Lipa, who's right here, whose record I wasn't really a big fan of, but especially somebody like Katy Perry. So much less of that pop star cringe, all right, on here than normal. So, to make a long story much, much shorter, she impressed me a lot. Has a lot of genres on here, has a lot of interesting stuff, has a lot of tracks I'll even return to. So definitely feeling a 7 out of 10 here. My favorite track was Night Crawling. Absolutely fantastic one. And my least favorite track was Hate Me. All right. Now we're going to talk about something even more complicated. A lot more complicated. We'll put it like that. And that is Yungblud, a up-and-coming pop, rock, alternative. You could even go as far as to say that he brushes on the emo culture. I wouldn't call his music emo because, of course, we do have to differentiate the genre and the style there. But either way, an artist that falls under all of those content borders, all of those genres, and just kind of cultural areas. You know, Yungblud, we know him. I feel like everybody has their opinion on Yungblud already, and I'm really curious as to how many people, like myself, are going to be more convinced with their opinion on Yungblud after this record, because I had certain skepticisms, I had certain, like, nagging things about him, and I had certain, you know, even just some of my, like, optimism or pessimism about him was changed on this record, and I feel like I finally have a good opinion on Yungblud, and I don't know if this was really the conclusion I wanted to have to come to with his music, but I've definitely got some opinions to state with this one. We'll put it like that. So what I want to preface this with is that this album isn't all bad. You know, I mean, that's kind of a negative thing to come straight out with, and you would kind of get the implications behind that, but it's not all terrible musically speaking. Okay, a lot more of my problems come into play with the actual presentation and the personality behind the music. And if we're just talking about the music at its very, very base core of what's going into your ears and what's happening there are a lot of fun moments on here. I think that he can't really write a hook or perform a hook to save his life, but at the same time, I think that the way that the hooks come across is still okay, you know, and I'm very pleased with that every time, where it's like, wow, you are really getting me to kind of nod my head along and sing along with like 2 words, you know. He'll be repeating the same couple words, and it's just like, oh, all right, I can still deal with this. And there's some, you know, some solid guitar parts that are kind of fun. There's some fun instrumentals on here. It does borrow a lot from a lot of pop punk, a lot of the kind of culture surrounding pop punk. Like, I'm thinking Fall Out Boy, I'm thinking Blink-182, I'm thinking Warped Tour. You could think Warped Tour kind of content happening on here. Not really quite that MySpace area kind of emo, but definitely that skater emo thing that you might want to consider with this. And that is kind of where my positives of this album end, and also leads directly into my problem with it. This feels like absolutely just packed to the brim with pandering to a depressed teenage audience. I want to, you know, almost remain open-minded to the kind of shit that he says on here, to the kind of lyricism, the presentation, the angstiness behind it all. But his collaborator on here, the only person that he has featured on this record, Machine Gun Kelly, I feel the same ways about his music, about how he tries to be very, very edgy, very angsty, very teenage sounding, definitely appealing to that, you know, age bracket of 13 to 17-year-olds who are feeling all kinds of down, all kinds of ways, much like I was before I graduated, before I, was kind of pulling myself together in that last like year of high school, feeling, a lot of like angsty, kind of against the system almost feelings, a lot of like, heartbreak kind of dramatic stuff going on with a lot of like teenagers, I feel like this is just brutally pandering so hard to that kind of audience. And of course, you're going to look for something relatable in that mind state. And you're going to look for something that you can even just vaguely identify with, which is why I liked a lot of like horrendous fucking music at that time. I mean, I was walking around wearing Papa Roach and Five Finger Death Punch shirts. All right. I was that kid. And I can tell you for damn sure, while I was that kid at 15 years old, I would have loved Yungblud's music, all right? Because I would not have seen through the fact that he is blatantly pandering to me. And, now at this point in my life, looking back, we've talked about on this podcast before my appreciation that I had for a very long time of Hollywood Undead being one of my favorite bands. Easily, like my second favorite band for a very, very long time. And part of that was, their sonic similarities to Linkin Park, the band that got me into music and whatnot. But a lot of that was that kind of rebellious angst that they had, that Yungblud gives off in his music. And I don't really know if a lot of the stuff that he says on here is beneficial at all. I can't really say that as someone who's been there and done that and still doing that in some places, his non-subtle, his very, very blunt and not in any way elegant portrayal of, thoughts of suicide in tracks like It's Quiet in Beverly Hills, are not really healthy, I think. I don't think that's great. And there's a lot of moments on here where, it could very easily be just like chalked up as like, okay, yeah, would be a great song to like get your angst and frustration out to. But then you have moments on here like Cotton Candy, which almost seem to be encouraging of cheating, of being unfaithful in a relationship. And of course there's situations where that's totally fine, but I don't think betraying another person is fine at all. I think that's terrible, and now I just sound like somebody's pissed off mother, and I totally realize that. But as somebody who's been there and done that really, really recently, I feel like all this guy does is just try so hard to relate to an audience who is younger than himself, not a ton younger. And, that's not the claim that I'm making, but a lot of the people that demographic have related to, myself included, in recent times has been people who are directly like their age or maybe a year older. We're thinking about Lil Peep. We're thinking about XXXTentacion. We're thinking about really that entire emo rap movement. Juice WRLD is only a couple years older than me, and, obviously still was when I was finding his music. I think that a lot of those names, and it's really, really depressing that everybody I just listed off there unintentionally completely is dead. But a lot of those, I think that the rap sounds of his style, he's totally ripping from them, while still ripping from a lot of punk. But all of them were like 17 when they came onto the scene. This guy's 23. And, I'm not like gatekeeping relating to teenagers. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like this is so manufactured. Because he comes across as fake. He comes across as even younger than they came across. As like he's playing the stereotype of an angsty teenager rather than actually being one. Than actually feeling the things that he feels. And in his efforts of coming across as this, I'm so real and I'm the alternative culture and I'm what punk really is now and things like that. In his effort to feel so much like that, I feel like he becomes less and less like that. And it just becomes more and more obvious that it's such a front. It's such a fake persona. And are some of my opinions on Yungblud and his music really even rather controversial and probably even a little bit dramatic on my part? Maybe yes. But this just really all rubbed me the wrong way, and I feel like I had to get this off my chest about his music. And like I said, that this was definitely a demographic that I was not even very long ago a strong part of, and I myself do not like feeling pandered to. From this angle, now I can see when people are like, this music feels pandering, or even just any kind of content that feels pandering. I'm thinking 13 Reasons Why, who he made an appearance for, certain pieces of content like that people end up saying that they feel pandered to when they're listening to, engaging with. I know what they mean now, because this was actually the most blatant representation of that I've ever felt. Now, going back, I feel like I have absolutely stated my piece on how I feel about, his actual music. Going back, stripping this way back a little bit here to just talk about some of the actual technical problems that went on with this. And now I have been a little bit less harsh on technical problems this year, especially just because of the fact of the matter being we might not have studio access sometimes. People are going to be working from home a lot. People are going to be doing this, that, and the other thing. But at the same time, as somebody who's as A-list, who's as prolific, and as important as he has become in the alternative culture, in the general music culture, just as a whole, especially music with young people interested, I feel like he probably could have gotten these issues sorted out, even if it was remote, even if somebody had to work from home. This could have been mixed so much better, because a lot of these explosive hooks and choruses that I'm supposed to be jamming along to, I just ended up having a look on my face like I smelled something bad when I listened to it, because it just doesn't have that punch to it. It doesn't have that kick, that drive, that boost of adrenaline that I want. And it's not to say that it never happened on here either, because moments like Strawberry Lipstick, even like Love Song and Ice Cream Man on here, even Weird, I guess the title track on here, you could totally look at it as really having like a good punch, a good chorus. But I think that you need to do a lot of improvement to make them hit like they're supposed to, because it's mixed poorly, so the instrumental doesn't really end up making up for the fact that it's really, really dull and lackluster writing for the most part. Is really all that's going on here, and that's a damn shame. I would like to mention the fact that while It's Quiet in Beverly Hills is going to end up being my least favorite, and we're transitioning into that part, I do want to specifically call out the track before it, the one with Machine Gun Kelly, as having one of the stupidest lyrics I have heard in a long time, driving the entire song. I think he said, "You're too hot to be acting like that." I let me see if that is verbatim, but that was the sentiment. Verbatim, the chorus on here performed by MGK is, "You're way too hot to be acting like that, acting like that, acting like that." Repeat that 4 times. This is really what we're working with here. Now, it kind of has this fun like pop punk sound to it that MGK, actually this was apparently an MGK song originally. But it's still kind of a fun song, so I can't fault it the most out of everything. But yeah, wow, that's bad. But again, just due to principle, that is not my least favorite, because I do think that there's some kind of not very good lyrics that just are not really good for people to be hearing on It's Quiet in Beverly Hills. I don't think that song really addresses certain issues with an amount of subtlety that they should be, and an amount of respectfulness that they should be. All right, next up we have Rico Nasty, a really great figure in music, in not only rap, but reaching into genres like experimental, bubblegum bass, hyperpop, especially, with multiple moments of production from Dylan Brady on here. She has been someone that I have been keeping a close eye on for the recent majority of time. She had that great EP last year with Kenny Beats. I was super excited to see what she had coming out next. And despite some of the reception being, almost kind of disappointed with this, I guess I don't see it. I don't see what could possibly be disappointing about this absolutely killer set of tracks. I got 3 songs into this. We were at Candy, Don't Like Me, and Check Me Out. All right. I was like, these are some okay songs right here. Check Me Out was a little bit oversimplistic. Don't Like Me was the track with Don Toliver and Gucci Mane. And while that was certainly a solid collab, like all of these are like 7 out of 10 kind of songs for me, that one, she seems like she becomes her features, which is an issue we'll get into as we go along here. But Candy was the opener, and the opener did not do a lot to rope me in. But you hit that first track with the Dylan Brady production, which is iPhone, which is a single that came out, and I absolutely adored this single when it came out and still do in the context of the record. It's just bops from there on out, man. It is all bangers, all killer, no filler. All right, you hear. I wouldn't cut any more tracks from here, but there are some that I don't like as much, and I do have to put that out there. There are still some I don't like as much, but I think that, once this thing gets going, it really, really gets going. Because we've got a few more tracks on here produced by Dylan Brady, and those are the highlights. No question about it. However, just to make a brief mention, because I don't usually do like track breakdown kind of things, the track Let It Out is produced under Dylan Brady's name. Wow, what a song. What a song. What an absolute jam that one is. All right. And I feel like Rico Nasty is really good at making the good tracks to jam the hell out to. All right. She kind of has a similar market behind her as somebody like a City Morgue. All right. I'm thinking even to some degree Denzel Curry, although he does a lot more relaxed stuff than she does. But, coming under this like Sugar Trap label that she likes to use, but it more so almost being like a experimental blend of rap metal, kind of influencing her sound, is of course going to just provide you bangers. It's all going to be very hype stuff that is very fun to listen to. And that's not to say that there's nothing different on here, because the track iPhone, to wrap back around to that, while it is an absolute jam, gets me feeling so fucking good, gets that dopamine rushing and makes you want to jump around. It has no aggression to it at all. It's got some really clever lyrics. It's got some nice singing. That's all the track is. It's great. Absolutely wonderful song, that one. Really, really like it. And to talk about some more stuff, I feel like it's very important to mention the features on here. Those were a really, really big thing about this. And you already know Rico Nasty's sound. You know what she's going to be serving up. So I don't think that talking about many of her solo cuts are going to be, that's not going to be very beneficial for either of us, because that's all kind of a given at this point. Most of those tracks, I can tell you there's some ups and downs. There's mostly ups, though, and the downs aren't really down all that low. So to look at it that way, I do want to give a lot of mention to the tracks on here that have features. So we do have Don Toliver and Gucci Mane on Don't Like Me. Now, they do dominate a big portion of this track, with Gucci Mane having a verse and Don Toliver having the hook, or at least, well over half of the hook. And I feel like what this brought about is, in order for Rico to in any way match what was going on, she had to kind of make herself into a Gucci Mane clone, So you essentially had Gucci Mane on one verse and 2 imitators on the rest of the song. Because, while of course she has a very different tone and timbre to her voice, and she's not going to sound exactly like him in kind of the way that Don Toliver does here, it's honestly hard to tell them apart. You just have a lot of Gucci Mane-isms going on. And the track that I feel like that happened even harder on is the one on here with Trippie Redd. Now, this is the best thing Trippie Redd has done all year. that's saying pretty much nothing, and I also would have gotten way, way tired of it if I had to listen to a whole album of it, but I think that this is a really solid Trippie Redd track for what it is. And the reason I say it's a Trippie Redd track rather than a Rico Nasty track is just how much it sounds like a Trippie Redd track, even when Rico is on the mic. This is produced in a way where Trippie is very, very well in his element, of course, as you would kind of expect. You know, you're gonna have guests, you're gonna make it look nice for your guests, all right? You're gonna clean your house up to the point where your guest is going to be comfortable and keep some things around for them. You know, I feel like a rap song can almost be looked at in the same light, where you should hop behind some production that they're going to be at least kind of comfortable on, unless they want to try something new out of their comfort zone. However, what I don't think was necessary is Rico to come across exactly in the same way as Trippie does on here. She doesn't do emo rap kind of stuff. She doesn't do sing rap and all that much. I feel like her strong suit is doing the really aggressive stuff and or getting, you know, in her feelings a little bit on some tracks, but just doing like a kind of just emotive pop song kind of feel, much like iPhone. I don't think she comes across as somebody who's great at the whole emo rap aesthetic like Trippie Redd is, but I think that that's a compliment more often than not, because I feel like she's stooping to his level when matching with Trippie Redd. And unfortunately, that did make that one of the least enjoyable moments on here. And I feel like the situation with Amine is really weird, because this is the one moment out of the 4 features where she doesn't just become the feature, she's almost completely outside of her element. I do wonder if this was originally going to pop onto Amine's last album because of the way that Rico directly clashes with Amine on here, serving up a very aggressive, raw kind of performance on her verse with a lot of like a lot less chill energy than this like mellowed out flute beat and Amine presentation that is exactly what you would expect Amine to be on. And Amine also dominates way more of this track than Rico does. He has the first verse, he comes in, and I'm pretty sure she just has one verse on the back end of the song. So I do almost wonder if this was originally Amine's song on his Limbo album. Because if anybody remembers my take on those features, it was almost that they were really, really out of their element. And in some cases, it worked super well, like Young Thug's appearance on there, where he did the whole falsetto sing thing, and I absolutely vibed with it. I thought it was amazing. But on here, this does feel like it clashes a lot, much like the Injury Reserve feature that happened on there, where it just seemed like such a weird pairing, and it didn't necessarily come across as mixed the best. It didn't necessarily come across like it just was doing all that much that was great. But this one is still a really, really good track. I love all of Amine's parts on here. I think that this is a great Amine song. Rico Nasty hardly exists on it, and what she does serve up doesn't really mash up. So that is kind of the thing. Now, I have been teasing towards there is a 4th feature section on here, that being the Smack-a-Bitch remix featuring Ruby Rose, Sukiana, I believe is the way that name is pronounced, and PP Cocaine, which is just a name I did not want to see pop up on here. I have stated before that she comes across to me like if the girl from Fairly Odd Parents, I think it's one of the fairies themselves. I forget because it's been a long time, but it comes across as you would know the character's voice that I'm thinking of if she just started a rap career and decided that she was going to take strong influence from 6ix9ine. I find absolutely nothing tolerable about her voice whatsoever, and it's like intentional too. It's not even just like you have a like tone of voice that I don't like. It's excruciating to listen to. I don't know how she's gaining fans. I really don't, because every time she seems to be brought up like in a conversation, I'm not the only one, okay? Nobody likes this girl's voice. All right, this is just, it's grating. It's so grating. I don't like to be this guy who's just like, yeah, this is almost objectively bad, but it's almost objectively bad, dude. Ruby Rose serves up a great performance on here, and I'm kind of indifferent to Sukiana's performance on here. I don't know why somebody would bother with this when the regular version of Smack a Bitch could have been included as track 15, and that could have been the bonus. What a banger. What a fucking banger having just Rico on this is. God damn, man. Having that Kenny Beats production, we saw how good that went. We saw how good that went with Anger Management. It's such a good pairing because Kenny makes these like fun, bouncy banger beats that just make you nod along, make you dance along, make you want to fucking move. That is the kind of song that Smack a Bitch should be. And I love it. Love that track. It's amazing. Amazing song. But I feel like that's all I really have to say on here. There's a lot of like what you would expect from Rico Nasty. There's a lot of moments on here. Well, a handful of moments on here, especially when she's working with collaborators where it's like, oh, that's a little different for her. It's a little out of the ordinary. That definitely exists on here as well. But if you're a fan, obviously want to check this out. Already have, I'm sure. If you're somebody who's into any kind of progressive pop, rap, experimental music, probably also going to dig this. If you're into the movement, the hyperpop movement, if you're into music from people like Dorian Electra and 100 Gex, this is pretty much the rap version of that. You are going to have literally some of the same production from Dylan Brady on the best tracks here. So you're probably going to find this very, very compelling. I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on this. And my favorite track did end up being iPhone. Nothing blew me away quite as much as that single did. And my least favorite track does end up, rather predictably again, being the track with Trippie Redd, Loser. So now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, I think we do need to speak on Blank Banshee's new record, GAIA. Okay, this hasn't been receiving anywhere near as much ink as I thought it would. And I guess I don't know if Blank Banshee has kind of fell off. Obviously, you guys know some of my only exposure to Vaporwave, and I have checked out much, much more. Big shout out to Pad Chennington since then, because I did love the Vaporwave I checked out. But some of my only exposure to Vaporwave was some of the very landmark albums. This being the biggest in Vapor Trap was Blank Banshee Zero. All right, I checked out that, loved that project. And I know a lot of people love that project. It's a cult hit. It's a fan favorite. It is really, really big in the Vaporwave scene, and it's mentioned constantly. So I don't really know why it goes undetected and under the radar when Blank Banshee releases an entire new album. Pretty interesting one at that. So this one is a little bit all over the place. I have to say, this has nowhere near the song structure, the individuality in each song, and the cohesion and the feeling, the just general mood that was very, very intentional as something like Blank Banshee Zero, and probably a lot of that work in between there, even if I'm a little bit less familiar with it. But its chaos is kind of its beauty, because it results in a lot of moments that just blow you away. There are some samples that will just come in and just shake you, all right? It just makes you, absolutely forces you to pay attention to it. It will come out of nowhere and just surprise the hell out of you, and you'll be moving along to it, and you will just be taken on a trip, all right? This record takes you on a trip. However, the big problem is just how little you can remember each individual song and be like, oh yeah, I like that one and that one and that one. You can't do that on this record. That's because song structure hardly exists. And I think that is the big problem with this. They could have been so easily remedied, is that you could have incredibly simply taken the chaotic nature of these, made it a little bit more cohesive, put a big synth melody or a sample that goes through the entire song, doesn't ever go away, or, just returns and kind of give us like a verse chorus situation. There are only a couple moments like that. We kind of constantly just get berated with sounds on this record. It is kind of crushing in that way at times. It is distracting and big and loud and huge. But that's just how it is. All right. That's how it is. It exists in that space. And that is just the energy that it embodies. Now, is it cool on its own? Yeah. Hell yeah. All right. I enjoy this. And I'll listen to it again. I'll listen to it a few more times. I think that it is a good, like, trance-like state to get into, but, like, a more crazy one by far than you would usually find with a vaporwave or even vapor trap release. This is a way, way, way less relaxing experience than Blank Banshee Zero, to, again, wrap that back around. And way less chill and relaxed and trance-like than almost anything I've heard in vaporwave in any of its subgenres. Just really is kind of loud and big and huge and almost obnoxious to a point. I'm really, really, really 50-50 on it for reasons that I feel like I've already made obvious. I big for song structure. All right. And every once in a while, you would actually get tracks with vocals on here. I think there's only 2 of them on here. Yeah. There was Fun to My Death. And then there was the second song on here, Mind Trap. Mind Trap had some rapping. And Fun to My Death more had some, like, almost emo-tinged singing going on. And it was really, really edgy kind of lyricism going on as well with it. But it was cool. That song is super cool. All right. The way the vocals were mixed, the way that the song just comes across as like really gritty and big and edgy and kind of disgusting. Just big. It's bassy. It's loud. Just makes you. These grimy synths on this track. Just fucking. And that was easily my favorite song on the album to just kind of transition in here. To just talk about that. And my least favorite on this album, I feel like, is incredibly unnotable. I went right ahead and gave that to Primordial. Not a track I remember. I feel like Blank Banshee is a really good musician, but this fell short of a lot of potential to me. And I feel like if we would have just had a little bit more song structure going on, I would have to give this a lot higher than the 6 out of 10 that I am going to give to it. I feel like I spent way more time talking about these records than I expected myself to. I feel like I definitely went on some tangents when I'm not being held together and just free to let my thoughts roam. I feel like that is definitely far more likely to happen. But I feel like we had some fun talking through some records tonight. I think that it would be great if you let me know what you thought of all of these in the comment section below. That would be awesome. Since we don't have any conversation going on here especially, it'd be great to know some of your thoughts and your opinions. But yeah, that's all we got for you. And again, you might be seeing Micah sooner than that, but you will see both of us again next Friday, same time, same place. Stay subbed. Drop a like. We appreciate you. And have a good night.